And here we are looking at themes that look at women, and particularly as we continue to observe themes of Women's Month here in South Africa, looking at the law and how the law may protect a woman's rights to dignity, equality, and freedom from discrimination. But those rights can look very different, as we noted, where they meet a pay slip or whether it is in the boardroom or job interview, etc. So we're going to speak to Professor Linda Meyer, who's joining us on the line. She is, of course, the Managing Director at Rosebank International and visiting professor at Nelson Mandela University. Prof, it is always just so wonderful to connect with you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope that you're well.
Thank you very, very much. We know that South Africa's constitution, talks and it's written in paper that women's equality and equal rights are important. But what does equality actually mean when we move from the law into a woman's everyday life experience?
Well, certainly when we look at women and your daily operation, you have different roles that you fulfill. So it might be as a mother, it might be as an employee, it might be as an employer. And in each of those roles, women face systemic challenges that really, notwithstanding the constitutional guarantee that there will be equality, dignity, and freedom from discrimination for every woman, the practices in the real life situation is very different. And we see that then manifested in all three of those domains as women then operate.
Right. The lived experience is still quite a challenge at this time. Why have, why have progress, or why has progress rather in education, employment, and representation not necessarily translated as you and I speak when we look at, equal economic opportunity and professional spaces for women in South Africa?
Well, certainly the transformation construct has been very slow. And this is through many reasons. But what we're starting to see now is that from the bottom up, things are starting to change. So if we look at our enrollments, for example, in universities, we can see that in the contact environment, it's close to a 60-40 split, females being in the majority and males being around 40%. In the distance mode, we're seeing a split of about 70-30, 70% females, 30% males. So that's what's happening with the transformation of education. But what is disheartening is that when we look at the STEM, the science, technology realms, engineering, and so forth, that there still is a lag of females that are selecting those particular study areas. So there are systemic challenges. And certainly when we look at the workplace, for example, if you'll just allow me to share some statistics.
Yeah.
That women who are in tax-paying jobs earn around 78 cents for every rand that a man earns. So roughly 22% below that of what men earn in comparative jobs. Now, and this is regressing. It was 89 cents in 2008. So this gap really is widening, and we need to pay particular attention to that. And the government is has got great legislation around this, but we need to see that there's enforcement. That if whether you're a female or a male doing the same job, that you paid equally. And companies need to be penalized if they don't do that. But of course, now when we look at the informal economy, we see that when there are street traders or domestic workers or unregistered small businesses, this gap balloons to where females are earning 56.1%, comparatively to what their male counterparts are earning in the informal economy. Now, when we look at the formal sector, this really is where we have to pay attention. Because although the constitutional promise of equal pay unravels the fastest, when we look at this, we see that when we look at executive roles, and we speak about the glass ceiling, that 47.3% of senior management roles are now held by women, and that's a huge advancement that we've made in the time of democracy. But when we look at executive level roles, we can see that is a sharp decline in those particular roles.
Okay, I'd like us to talk about experience for a little bit there, and perhaps you can continue to contextualize through those examples as you make them. Do women experience equality differently depending on their income, their race, where they're located, levels of education?
All of those factors, as you've mentioned them, play an important role. But we must accept that Black females are the most prejudiced within our economy. We see that for Black females specifically, and when we look at the demographic breakdown of South Africa, we must put this proportionally, and that is why it is the reason, is that African Black people are 80% of our population. The white population, contrary to popular belief, is only 6.7% of the South African population. And then the colored population, which is now the second largest, is around 7.8%, and then the Asian population around 3%. So it stands to reason that there's much more Black females, obviously, that are participating in the economy, but that group is the most severely prejudiced. So they are expected, for example, and there's in our country we have a real problem around single-headed households where mothers have the responsibility solely of raising children. So we see, for example, that Black females are responsible for looking after elderly people, their grandparents and so forth, and that burden falls on them. But also that young children are often sent off to grandparents because the mother has to work, she has to earn an income, and there's a dependency on that. And of course, education always plays a role. So when we look at our unemployment statistics, we have the second highest youth unemployment rate in the world, as we all know. Yes, and we can argue about what is measured, what's not measured, who's in the informal economy or not. But the fact is, we all know people in our families that are unemployed. That's a reality. So we are around 60% on the expanded definition for those up to 24 years. And then, 43% is the official number for those. South Africa is the only country in the world where youth is classified to 35. And that's why we see in many of the youth leagues, this is just a joke, that the youth league, many of the people have got gray hair.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that category. But so overall, but when you look at graduate employment, those with a degree, the unemployment rate is only between 10 and 12%. So it's a no-brainer. Education makes a difference, and we can't argue that. The statistics, you can't argue with statistics. Facts are facts. But what is it for Black females? Yes, they are coming through and all of females have come through middle management and senior management roles. But white women are severely overrepresented in executive roles and board roles. And specifically, when we look at the JSE listed companies, we only have 3 females that are CEOs of the JSE top 40 companies. And 5 out of the 40 board chairs are women. So those are the things that we need to focus on. As a society, we've worked hard now to get, females into the workplace. We have to do more. But we now have a very strong cohort of senior managers, but we are severely underrepresented in the executive roles, board roles, and director roles. And that is where the energy and the attention needs to go now.
Right, right. And as you noted, statistics are statistics and we can't argue with them. But we are in a position where we are having these conversations and the discourse is changing. I'd like us to tap into gender theory a little bit. This word patriarchy is moving through a lot of these conversations and dialogues, Professor. But let's look at that. Let's look at patriarchy, what exactly it is, and perhaps as you respond to that, the role of men. What role do men need to play so that we can achieve these genuine gender equality frameworks that we'd like to see going forward?
Well, certainly, in a society, and our society still has very strong patriarchal norms. So that means that male figures take on the head of households, the head of organizations, and we expect that and we accept that. But it is changing and it has to change systemically. Now, my problem is not that we have patriarchy, and matriarchy is where the mother is obviously the mother figure in charge of a household, in charge of an organization, in charge of a societal construct. My problem is misogyny, and that is when there is pure hatred for women or deliberate undermining of women.
Yeah.
When men orchestrate deliberately to ensure that women don't rise beyond a particular level. So I always make the example, when I walk into a boardroom, it is natural for men, and I just want to give this example of patriarchy. When I walk into a boardroom, it's very natural for the men in the room to expect that I must pour the tea, notwithstanding that in most instances I'm at a much higher level within my organization than they are.
Yeah.
So I absolutely refuse to do that, because I will not feed into that patriarchal construct, which is absolutely deluded. As women, we also need to stop doing those things, defaulting to letting that norm be accepted. It really, when we go into a room, we stand on our own 2 feet, we stand on our own accord, and we are not bowing to anyone else. And I always say, when anybody expects you to go into a room and be smaller than you are, that is a problem. Now, with patriarchy, of course, we have these systemic challenges because we come from a legacy of that. In all of our cultural constructs, whether it's white households, English or Afrikaans, whether it's from black households, whether it's from Indian households or colored households, that is the norm. Now, I've spoken about that. There's a lot of female-headed households, and slowly those things are being, there's a change in it. But as a society, we haven't made the deliberate decision, started really focusing on education programs to normalize equality, because people are equal before the law. But if I tell you, if there's a child that is 10 years old, if there's an adult that is 20 years old, and I give them a box, and I put them both on that box, and there's a fence in front of them, and that child cannot see over the fence, but that adult can see over the fence. Equally, I've given them each a box, but systemically, the challenge remains, because I haven't normalized what needs to be seen in terms of, ensuring that each person is not prejudiced in any way before the construct of how our societal context then unfolds.
Right, exactly the kind of voice that we need to fight these injustices. The problem that I will always have is how women need to get into these spaces and fight a problem that they necessarily did not create. But perhaps we can have that conversation another day. Professor Linda Meyer, thank you very much for sharing with us so generously. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Professor Linda Meyer, Managing Director at Rosebank International. It is exactly 9:30 at the stage, which means it's time for us to say a very good morning to Figile Lungwati, who's standing by with the latest sports.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Matseko. Let's kick off with football news this hour. Former Arsenal and France national captain Patrick Vieira has been appointed as the new head coach of the Senegal men's national football team. A 50-year-old replaces Pape Thiaw, who was sacked in the wake of the country's last 32 exit at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Born in Senegal's capital Dakar, Vieira will now manage the country of his birth, having moved to France age 8 before later winning over 100 caps for Le Bleu and lifting the World Cup in 1998 and the European Championship in 2000. Senegal's Football Federation said the appointment reflects its desire to strengthen its high-level technical staff and is perfectly aligned with the nation's sporting ambitions. Mozambique international Fernando Chamboko believes the continued growth of futsal in his country has created a platform for the nation to challenge strongly at the Total Energies CAF Futsal Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2026. The defender expressed optimism about Mozambique's prospects, pointing to the development of the sport and the positive result achieved in recent years. The Mozambique International believes the foundations are in place for the nations to compete strongly against some of Africa's leading futsal sides. The CAF Futsal Cup of Nations Morocco will bring together the continent's leading futsal nations as they compete for African honors. The draw, which was held in Cairo, So the 8 nations drawn into groups of 4, which hosts Morocco placed in Group A alongside Libya, Zambia and Algeria, while Egypt headlined Group B with Angola, Mozambique and Tanzania. A tournament will be played between the 12th to the 21st of October 2026. In tennis news, Venus Williams has been given a wild card for the US Open singles, and sister Serena could potentially still join her with one spot remaining. Venus first played in New York 29 years ago and reached the final on her singles debut in 1997. The American won 2 of her 7 Grand Slam singles titles at Flushing Meadows in 2000 and 2001. Serena returned to tennis in June, 4 years after evolving away from the sport, and displayed in singles at Wimbledon. The sisters made their return together at the Cincinnati Open on Tuesday, losing a thriller at the Cincinnati Open in 3 sets. Wild cards for the women's doubles have yet to be announced, and there are 3 remaining places in the revamped mixed doubles competition that takes place from the 24th of August. Some more tennis news. World number 1 Aryna Sabalenka proved why she is the top female tennis player in the world, currently, as she hammered China's Wang Xinyu 6-1, 6-3 to reach the 4th round of the Cincinnati finals. Sabalenka says focus was key in a serve.
I think the key today was that I was just like really focusing point by point. Maybe, of course, like when you win games on your serve a bit easier than usual, gives you a bit more confidence to go after your shots on the return games. And then it just like feels so good. And then you're able to focus on each point and play free and enjoy it. But I think the real key was that I was like really focused in at each point.
Sabalenka is now scheduled to play against Sarah Beljak. The Czech secured a 4-6, 6-1, 6-2 winner over Ekaterina Alexandrova. She says she's more than ready to face the 20-year-old Beljak.
Yeah, she's a great player. I actually watched a little bit of her match with Alexandrova today, and she's really moving well, super motivated, playing point by point. So it's going to be a great battle, and I'm really looking forward.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figide Dungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa World Hour with Mphosi Tole.
David Njumbe, who's a long-serving personal assistant to Tundu Lisu for over 15 years, on the night of 20 May, he survived a shocking abduction attempt just meters from his home. Talk us through what exactly happened on that night.
It is something that happened in my head. I expected to meet such situation for several months since the first attempt to abduct me was 6 months ago. There was a car coming very speedy behind me. I let them go. Instead of going, more than 6 people came out of that car and attacked me and they said police. I started fighting back and they handcuffed me. Immediately they started beating me, and one of them was telling me, "You have been running here and there. Now it's your time, it's your day, it's your last day."
Africa World Hour with Mphosi Tole. Catch it on the Channel Africa app, SABC Plus, and on channelafrica.co.za. Weekdays from 9 till 10 p.m. Central African Time.
We're 24 minutes away from 10 a.m. in Central African Time. A very good morning, we say, to João Pedro Yabala, who's standing by with the latest in business news.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Mateko. In your business news this hour, we start off in South Africa, where small-scale farmers in the Mpumalanga province are receiving new support to help them expand their agricultural businesses. The provincial government has launched the Excellent project in Kwaggafontein, which is aimed at providing farmers with resources and support to build sustainable agricultural enterprises. Agriculture MSc Ketiwe Mwekezi.
We have different programs in the department that gives an opportunity to that farm who is sitting there saying that I don't see myself growing this business. I think it was last month we have advertised for ECASP, it's Comprehensive Agricultural Support. ECASP assists you when you are approved, you are being assisted firstly to grow your business in terms of having infrastructure in your farm and also other funds. And also we are giving the mentorship, meaning that we're also giving skills and trainings.
In Zambia, the re-election of President Hakainde Hichilema for a second 5-year term has been welcomed by markets as a sign of policy continuity and economic stability. Hichilema is praised for a series of market-friendly economic reforms, a landmark restructuring of Zambia's debt following the country's 2020 sovereign default, and renewed efforts to revive the vital copper mining sector. However, despite the positive macroeconomic indicators, many Zambians continue to grapple with the high cost of living, unemployment, and questions about whether economic growth is translating into tangible benefits for ordinary citizens. Zambian economist Yusuf Dodia elaborates.
I don't think that the mining industry has created enough jobs for Zambians to be satisfied. We're exporting between $50 and $70 million a day of copper. For that amount of export, one would have expected that the mining industry would have employed a couple of million Zambian employees. So I guess the next 5 years is about attracting investors in copper producing products, copper cables, copper products, switches, light switches, electrical products being made in Zambia. I think that is where the job creation is going to take place.
Moving to Cameroon, a new Afrobarometer study has revealed that 60% of youth are considering leaving the country. The young Cameroonians are becoming increasingly disillusioned with domestic economic prospects as unemployment surges and confidence in the state deepens. According to the report, youth aged 18 to 35 represent the most educated generation in the country's history, with 80% having attained at least some secondary education. However, they face disproportionately high levels of joblessness, and 36% reporting that they are unemployed and actively searching for